The nuclear program of Ayatollah must be destroyed as well, because we cannot afford an Islamic nuclear power. They already, with small weapons, they have been bullying and intimidating everybody. They have turned the Middle East into rubble. They destroyed Gaza. They're about to destroy Lebanon. And they are sacrificing basically regions for honor. They're fighting for honor, even if it means they die in pursuing honor, the public status, the egoistic approach to the problem. So with this said, the fight is very, very clear, and I think Israel is being very cautious, very careful of how they deal with the problem.
And I wanted to ask you also about the feelings inside you. First, what you thought when you saw what was happening the October 7th? For the reasons that we know, but it's like another cycle of big pain. What do you thought?
Someone who studied history, especially the history of the Holocaust, I realized that what we are dealing with is a Holocaust. Like from the early beginning of the war, on October 7th, I say this is a modern day Holocaust. It's not about how many people died, it's how they died. So immediately, I don't want to say my frustration with the world's denial of the past. It's the current denial of the genocide that happened on October 7th, and the world's pressure to force Israel to surrender to the will of savages. And my concern, if this savagery or barbarism that we witnessed on October 7th, if to be validated, this means the end of our civilization. But of course, I'm aware of the Islamic support, unconditional support to Hamas, and the blind hatred towards Israel only because they are Jewish. Not having the compassion to see the women, the children, the innocent people who have been kidnapped, who have been slaughtered based on their ethnic and religious backgrounds. That now this is not a political matter. It's not a matter of the opinion of the majority. This is not democracy that we vote on something, because if I allow to the majority of the people to decide what is a genocide and what is not, contradicting the facts on the ground, this means the end of democracy.
How can you explain the experience of to be the ears and the eyes of sometimes of yourself as a kid, as a young boy, as a young man, but also when you realized the horror inside Hamas? How can you explain this to a Spanish reader?
First of all, I was born in the what's so-called Palestinian culture. I was supposed to believe that I was Palestinian, but up to this point, I don't know why they wanted me to become a Palestinian. And when I rebelled against Palestinian, I suddenly became a traitor. I grew up in an environment where they wanted me to be the victim. I lived that mentality for a while. Then I choose to drop the victim narrative and the victimhood completely, regardless of all the hardships, traumas from my childhood until I left that society.
How do you see the evolution of the public opinion on Israel and on Hamas since before the October 7th and this year and nowadays?
There is a narrative of victimhood, and there is the story of resilient people who choose not to be victims. And I think this is the major difference between the Israelites, who truly, throughout century, suffered so many attempts of ethnic cleansing, genocide, destruction. expelling, exile, whether to Babylon, whether it's the Pharaoh of Egypt, and the miracles that happened of survival.
Yeah.
I see the model of resilience and the model of a mentality that does not agree or accept to be victimized.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I see perpetrators who have been trying so hard to inflict pain and destruction on their adversaries, but in the meantime, they manage to invert the narrative and play the victim all the time. October 7 was an event that changed the course of history, in my opinion. Yeah. The world will never be the same after October 7. Now, the perpetrators, within no time, managed to invert the narrative to become the victims of genocide. Even though this is not the reality of their suffering. And that's not the reality in Gaza. The reality in Gaza, there are victims, but they are considered as collateral damage, as an outcome, victims of the use as human shields. Yeah. The eradicating Hamas is inevitable. And I don't think there is any possible way to eradicate Hamas without civilian casualties. Israel has been doing everything within their ability to minimize the civilian casualty. Hamas has been doing the opposite, everything within their ability to maximize the civilian casualty. This is obvious for anyone who sees things clearly. Hamas never claimed that any of their fighters got killed, so they counted all their savages as part of the collateral damage. What about the civilians who have been asked to evacuate certain areas and they insist on staying to give Hamas cover? What about all the tribes that actually support their Hamas members, where the Hamas member would go into the tunnel and abuse the hostages, then come to the surface and have dinner with his family, where they give him cover? Why the family are given the cover, or the tribe is given a cover to the Hamas members? And does that make them immune to an Israeli strike? Does that make them immune to an Israeli retaliation that is aiming only for one thing, to remove Hamas from power? So we are at war. It's a very ugly war. It's an open war. And none of us choose this war. I don't want to be in this war. But if I am forced to fight, and I have no other choice but to fight, then I must fight.